Culture is so important to Kimray and being a good cultural fit that, our interview process starts with a culture fit. Our voluntary turnover sits somewhere around like 3.5% year to date. There is not something that we do that we don't consider how is this going to impact our team members.
In this episode of Pulse, we're talking with Kevin Trowbridge, Director of Compensation at Kimray, a 75-year-old manufacturing company that's doing something rare in HR. They're leading with culture and using real-time workforce data to drive retention, engagement, and bottom-line impact. Kevin shares how Kimray built a culture-first hiring process, structured pay and job families to motivate frontline employees, and used HR data to help executives make faster, better decisions, all without hiring a full analytics team. Kimray has done an excellent job building a flexible workforce and tying HR programs to EBITDA. Kevin brings practical, real-world insights so you can do the same. Let's get into it. I'm here with Kevin Trowbridge, Director of Compensation at Kimray. He's been with Kimray about a year, and one of his big projects was to come in and add job levels for pay, correct?
Yes, that was one of the first things I was tasked with.
Great. So before we kick it off into a couple of the points that he and I want to discuss, Kevin, is there anything else that you would like the audience to know about you and Kimray before we get into it?
Kimray is a company. We've been around just over 75 years, founded in Oklahoma City, built in Oklahoma City, and just grew and grew and grew. We serve the oil and gas industry. We provide pressure release valves for our well sites around the country. And we are heavily influenced by that, but overall, we are a manufacturing company, and our CEO will remind you of that. We are a manufacturing company. We are not an oil and gas company. And the biggest thing is Kimray is so centered on our values, on our mission, and that is what we live by, and that's what we go every day, and we focus on, and we do our work according to that.
Awesome. And I love the Kimray story. I have a soft spot because I spent 5 years working with frontline organizations, helping them communicate with their employees. So I have a soft spot for frontline-based organizations and things they do. But our first question and topic I want to dive into is almost like a playbook out of the Built to Last book. I don't know if you've read that by Jim Collins.
Yeah.
And one of the points in there of companies that are long-standing history companies is they hire people first, and they have a certain culture in the company. And he uses all sorts of things in there, like HP was one of them, where they were concerned about building a company. The product was secondary, and like they had an idea of what type of organization they were going to build. And I think that is such a good place to start for Kimray, because you guys are culture first, and that's how you run. And I want to talk, like, what is it like to lead with culture as an organization, or be it an organization that does that?
Yeah. So to both parts, I mentioned our mission and our vision. Our mission is to better the lives of the people we serve. So that is what we do, whether it is in our community, at home, in the workplace. That is what our culture is driven off of. And that mission, I mean, it permeates every thought process. There is not something that we do that we don't consider how is this going to impact our team members? How is this going to impact our community? How is this going to impact, our home life, whatever it may be? So there are so many programs that are put in place here that, one, you don't see at other companies, or you don't see as fully embraced at other companies, that help create that culture here at Kimray.
What's one of those programs that is fully embraced?
Yeah. So one actually thing that we just got recognized for over the last couple of weeks is a recovery-friendly workplace. And so we actually work with rehab centers and places like that. So if we have team members that need to go into recovery, they're not going to, they're not going to be losing their jobs. We're going to be friendly to those coming out of recovery. And so it was a program, our leaders were recognized in DC and everything for it. That's a big program that we do that allows us to really impact a, part of the community that usually is looked down upon or overlooked just because they've gone through hard times. And our leaders are like, you know what, we're going to be a place that, we can make their lives better by being a company that is friendly to those going through.
I love that. I mean, I'm sure people have all known people that have had that happen, and it's awesome hearing organizations step up and do that kind of stuff. I really, really like that. That's a really cool program. But on the culture stuff, one of the things that you had mentioned, and maybe other people have done this, I don't know. I don't think anybody else has done it this way, but you guys lead with a culture first interview. So you put
Yes.
your culture interview first. And when you told me that, I was like, that's A, that's really awesome. And B, you've completely flipped the interview process on its head.
Yeah. So culture is so important to Kimray and being a good cultural fit that, yeah, our interview process starts with a culture fit. One thing that we talk about at Kimray is character and competence can lead to consistency. And that character piece is so important. Often you can teach the competency to people that you hire if they have good character. And so that's why we start with that. We want to make sure that one, you're going to be a good fit for Kimray. You understand our mission, you understand our values, and that you're really going to embrace that. And then, you know what, if we need to teach you things, then we're more than happy to do that. And we have such a great learning and development team. They go above and beyond, what a normal team I've seen does for team members to help them really develop their skills, and leaders embrace it too. And so, we focus on the character, we focus on culture, because ultimately that is going to make us successful.
Yeah. And I would imagine between that and the programs that you run and being embraced by leadership, all of that cultural play hits with your turnover rate, which, I mean, is probably a topic in itself, but it is low, right? Like, what is it?
Yes, incredibly low. So for our voluntary turnover sits somewhere around like 3.5% year to date. So people come here and they don't leave willingly. Obviously, you have certain group, you have that involuntary side, but in general, people just don't leave Kimray. They don't want to. They come here, we make sure we take care of them from a pay perspective, from a family perspective, from a benefits perspective, and then just the atmosphere here. It's so different than any other place that I've ever worked at. And it really does. I mean, you hear the cheesy line, I love my work family, and, my life at work is like a family. It's literally treated that way here. I mean, there are more questions about how are your family than it's how are you doing with your work. And that is so different than anywhere else I've ever been.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely a bottom line number to that, and we'll talk about that when we get to kind of our data section. But you mentioned you take care of people from a pay and benefits perspective, and so I wanted to really dive into that a little bit, because when you came in to Kimray, you set up job families and a whole new compensation structure.
Yes.
And that was both from having that structure, but also building a flexible workforce. So I kind of want to touch on both of those. What happened when you came in and implemented that compensation structure?
Yeah. So when I came in, there were a few groups within our organization who had not had the chance to build out levels. Now, from a training perspective, they had, but there had never been that. What does it look like to have? Okay, is there an impact to my pay for learning more? And up to this point, they hadn't done that. Now, we had been around for over 75 years, and that hadn't happened. Our products had become more complex. There was more things that we had to understand, our assemblers had to work on, but there was never anything put in place to directly tie learning more about their craft to their pay. And so there wasn't that incentive. So I was brought in to help kind of push that across the finish line. There had been work done, but it had never been put in place. And so I was able to kind of take what had been done, really get it to fit, one, best practice, and two, kind of how Kimray does things. And there was not a question of, what's the cost? Here's the cost, here's what it's the impact, but it wasn't oh my goodness. It was like, okay, let's do it. And the impact to team members when they realized I'm literally one certification away from getting a, dollar an hour raise, that's impactful on somebody making $18 to $20 an hour. $1 an hour is huge. And also, we've had, I think now we're at somewhere around 7 or 8 people since March who have completed their certifications and been able to level up and are making more, but they're also providing more to the company. They have more flexibility. They have more ability to do the things that we need them to do. And that's been big on, like you said, the flexible workforce. So
Yeah.
part of this change was also, if our warehouse people want to go learn assembly, they have the ability to go over there and do that. And if our assemblers are needed in the warehouse area to help pack product, our assemblers can go over there and work on that. And so it's not going to be it's not something where they're, completely segregated. Is if we need you here, go work here. And that flexibility, I mean, it's made managers' lives just dramatically easier too.
Yeah. And I mean, who doesn't like people doing a good job and getting leveled up and promoted? Like, I mean, everybody loves to see that.
Yes.
And there's also probably an ancillary benefit. Like, we talked a little bit at the start about built to last. And I remember this vividly, and it was like really early in my career. I was at a Christmas dinner for my wife's company, and the CEO talked about, because it was during the recession, like this was like 2011, and he talked about how they needed to make sure that everybody stuck around and worked hard because of that. He took the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing, and he was like, because we need the knowledge that is inside the workforce to help continue us. And then he launched into, the celebrating of tenure milestones with people at the company. But that's almost like you're almost like trying to embed that. I mean, maybe purposefully or not, embed that into the organization with this cross skilling and low turnover and everything else. There's all sorts of ancillary benefits of that.
Yeah. And I mean, one big thing that we pride ourselves on is when people do leave, typically it's after 5 or 6 years. We're not talking about, really quick turnover. We're talking about people work here for a long time, and it's a place where people want to work. It's not, as the generations shift, I mean, as research has shown, younger generations are more apt to switch careers and switch companies. We have people that are part of those generations that have already been here 10 years, and they're in their late 20s because they started at 18, because they knew this was a good company. They knew what they wanted to do. They came here and they've already worked here a decade, and they're still in their 20s, and they don't want to go anywhere, and they really love it. They want to move up. They want, we provide, through how we conduct our business, we provide a safe place to work. We provide a comfortable lifestyle, and competitive pay. And there's so many positive things about working at Kimray that people just don't want to go anywhere else. There's nowhere else better, in our opinion, obviously, than working at Kimray.
Yeah. But I mean, you're in a competitive market. Like, it's not like you're the only employer in town.
No, we have a few very large employers, other manufacturing companies very similar to us, and then other larger companies that do warehousing. I mean, Amazon's everywhere. They take everybody. We aren't losing people to Amazon. We aren't losing people like other companies because we're competitive and people like working here. So.
And employment's a two-way street. Like, I lived in Europe for a while, and in Europe they have different labor laws and all that kind of stuff. And I'm in California, so we're at will. And they were like, "How is that even possible?" And it's like, well, if it's two-way street. Like, people leave for various reasons of companies, but if they stick around, clearly the company is doing something for them that keeps them there. And if you're having that kind of tenure and 3% turnover, I mean, and in a generation that stereotypically has high turnover, it's a huge testament to the Kimray way.
That's right.
But I want to dive in a little bit. I could talk about the culture thing all day, because I mean, you see turnover and everything that goes on in the general population. But I want to talk a little bit about how you guys are using data in all of this. So you have low turnover, you have culture initiatives, and how are you paring that down to the bottom line of the business? Because a lot of people that listen to this show are in, private equity environments or high stakes environments where they're really trying to tie initiatives to EBITDA, and you guys do that.
Yeah. So one of our main pretty much our main focus for a lot of our bonus plans is EBITDA. It is, this is what our bonuses are paid off. This is how we measure our achievement. And one way that we contribute to that, one is we're able to provide, okay, one of the great features that I love is the insights piece of HRBench that just got rolled out. And we're able to see kind of trends, and it's able to point out outliers and things like that. But also, we're able to provide the turnover data. If our CEO's like, tell me the turnover in this area, or can we tie our just using turnover data? We just got our newest engagement survey results back. Can we tie the engagement results to our turnover level? And absolutely, you can see there's higher turnover where there's less engaged team members. And we're able to tie that together, and we're able to drill down and say, okay, what teams is it? Who is it? What can we do? How can we help those leaders get their team members more engaged? What's the feedback? And so we're able to take the data from HRBench because it's real time and provide that real time information to our leaders. Cost of turnover, knowing what, how much it costs to replace somebody, and knowing that our turnover is so low, we're not having to pay as much. We're not having to go out and hire headhunters to be able to find people, because we can just post it and we'll get 100 applications.
Yeah.
And so having that metric, being able to pull, and it just keeps growing. That's the great thing about HRBench. The metrics, you just keep getting more and more and more. And we've been able to build dashboards that we didn't have before, dashboards that are live. We were trying to do some Tableau work in the past. And when we engaged with HRBench and got our information, the feed set up, it was like, bam, done. We have right now, I could pull it up and say, this is what it is up to this point. So
yeah, that's cool. Like, so you were building Tableau dashboards before, and you mentioned in one of our previous conversations that, I mean, not to make it a total plug, but when you brought HRBench in, it freed up time from your Tableau dashboards of regular to be able to go do deep dive stuff. Like,
yes.
What was that like?
Oh man,
that shift.
The ability to have, so HRBench is great about providing, like, these are the most common metrics that you're going to need. So now we want to go look at absenteeism. So we're able to go into our system and pull what we need, because we don't have to run all these dashboards for everything else. Yeah. We're not having to spend the hours to build the files and do everything. We can start digging into, vacation usage. One topic that's been brought up was vacation and sick pay usage within, the first 30, 60, 90 days of hire, and first 30, 60, 90 days after a person's anniversary when their bucket gets reloaded. Is everyone using all their stuff right up front, or is it spread out throughout the year? And so we've been able to dig into that. We've been able to retirement forecasting.
Oh, yeah.
Things, just the number of dashboards we've been able to work on, because we aren't having to constantly update these other, what would be considered basic dashboards, because HRBench does it, and it's all there and it's all live. Man, it's the time savings that we've had has been huge.
What was the reason for looking at the vacation usage, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what was the question that you were trying to ask?
There was a time in our recent past history where people would get hired, and we are a company that that front loads your vacation. And we were looking at our vacation policy and looking at our potentially switching to a PTO bucket instead of vacation and sick. And the reason we were looking at that is we didn't want to potentially front load everybody's PTO and then they take it all and then leave. Yeah. And so it was like, do we have the right policy? Are we balancing protecting the company with taking care of our team members? And so it wasn't rampant, but it was probably more at one point than we wanted it to be. And so it was just, can we make a good policy decision with additional data? And we had the time to dig into this and not have to, worry about all these other dashboards. We don't have a whole separate person that's running just our dashboards. We are able to start working on this and do more in-depth, typically more difficult reporting, because all the basic and really high quality data is pulled out of HRBench.
Yeah. What I like about I'm going to make the connection. I don't know if that's where you were going, but the ability to be able to take the time to have a data-backed decision and be like what's going to be best for the workforce and the organization collectively, and have the time to be able to use data to make those good decisions so it doesn't feel arbitrary.
Absolutely.
I think cool.
It took us 20 minutes to run a report, to be able to run a report, to pull the turnover by business unit and then every sub department. Took us 20 minutes to pull that together into a PowerPoint out of HRBench, when trying to do that in Excel with the graphs and everything would have probably taken us an hour or two to get it for every department. And we were able to do it in 20 minutes at our VP of HR's request. Like, she was like, can you get this to me? Done. Send it over to her. She's like, this is great. And the ability to do that, that's an hour and a half of time that now we have to work on other things. And that's just huge. It has allowed us to dig into our system. It's allowed us to dig into, like I said, other more in-depth, more complicated analytics. And it's the year, it's almost been a year that we've been with HRBench. And I don't think any of us would have thought we would be this far on some of the things we're working.
That's awesome. Now, you did provide, I think, access to HRBench to quite a bit of your team for their own use. And I want to talk about what that did for the team, but then also I'll ask a follow-up question, but I'm going to precursor it so I don't forget, is like, how did people who aren't necessarily used to looking at data like that getting involved in the process? Because you come from compensation, so there's tons of data, and that's like a second language for you, maybe even first language, I don't know. But yeah, so like, what is giving access to data like that do for the team internally?
Yeah, giving access, I think, one, it kind of opened their eyes to what all there was. Like, I don't think anybody grasped just how many HR metrics there are out there and what can be measured. I think that was the biggest thing. And then HRBench is so easy to work in, so intuitive that it didn't overwhelm them. So they pulled it up and they have, this whole headcount turnover metric and ATS data, and it just section by section, and they're not overwhelmed by it. They're like, okay, that makes sense. And then how you use it, super simple, super easy to work with. So our HR team, they'll even admit themselves they weren't the most data centric. Like, they're not the biggest fans of working in Excel. But man, when we showed them HRBench, they're like, this is amazing. Like, we can go in and do this without, needing to request it from somebody or go to IT to get them to run a report for us or any of that. We can just go get it ourselves. Like, yeah. And here soon, we're going to be giving it to access to our C-suite so that they can go in and see what we're seeing. And then hopefully, and soon we will be able to give access to our VP level, so the level below C-suite, so they can go in and say, how is my business unit doing? And the idea that I can go to our head of supply chain and say, here you go, and she can see just supply chain. And we're able to put those restrictions in, and she can see her organization. I think they're going to be like, man, and a lot of our VPs love data. And so they may spend a whole day just clicking around in HRBench. So
yeah, that's the thing about especially if you're like in the managing up, like to C-suite or VP level, because they're all thinking about the business as a whole, that it's always data. There's always data having to go around. And I mean, it's like, I come from a marketing background. Marketing struggles with this a lot of times, giving data to executives. And I feel like I kind of sit in between HR and marketing now, and I have empathy for that side of HR also having to do that equation. So it's awesome to hear that you guys are going to give access to C-suite, eventually VP level. What do you think the outcome? What is your hope of that outcome?
They're more informed, that they are able to go and find answers themselves instead of, having to email our P&C team who then emails us or then goes in and looks. They can go in and say, okay, what is it looking like over the last 3 months? What's it looking like over the last year on our turnover? What's it looking like on our headcount? Because that's a huge thing. They have a headcount budget they have to stick to. What's my headcount out? We send out a weekly report right now, but man, it would be great to not have to send out a weekly report. If you want to know where it is, go in and find it, because it's updated every day, all the time.
Yeah.
So the ability to do that, the time savings, not having to go in and run these reports again, we're going to have 30 minutes or an hour to be able to go do something else. So,
or 30 minutes to an hour to think about the results.
Yes.
Like, that's another big part, is you just having to think.
We can look at the trends. The ability to look at trend lines and look at the data over time, I think that will be huge for them. So it's really exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin. I always love getting together and talking with you, also with manufacturers. Like I said at the start, I have a bit of a soft spot for that. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the audience with today? Any advice on tying HR data to EBITDA or culture
No,
initiatives?
just don't be afraid to, really dig into the analytics, dig into the numbers and use them and, help correlate things for your leaders because they don't always see it because, like you said, they're always looking at the big picture as a whole. And being in the space that I'm in, it gives us the ability to help communicate a story. And I tell this to everyone, part of analytics is not just the numbers, it's telling the story behind the numbers. And having the ability to do that at the drop of a dime is such a huge thing. And being able to do that, it has been game-changing for us here at Kimray.
Awesome. Well, that is really great advice to leave the audience with. Where should people connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Kevin Trowbridge, Kimray Inc., Director of Compensation. And that's pretty much the only social media I use. So that's Kimray, Trowbridge at Kimray.com. So feel free to shoot me an email or drop in on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Kevin. I really appreciate the time, and this was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Logan. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Pulse, the podcast that has real conversations with HR leaders linking people to performance. HRBench is the people analytics platform that turns HR data into business strategy. It connects to all your tools, HRIS, ATS, payroll, surveys, whatever you're using. In just a few clicks, you get over 45 metrics instantly visualized in boardroom-ready dashboards, benchmarked by industry and company size. Book a demo at HRBench.com and we'll build you a custom benchmark report using your data.